I think not. So anyway, he's continued to explore there and be involved in forums and being involved in planning many of them since 2010. Bill.
I'm going to start with that microphone. So we met in 2000. So Chuck came to a class that I started in 1993 called Understanding Variation. And the basics of that, not understood by most organizations today, and as you'll see in the presentation. And then it was presented to about 2 dozen suppliers as guinea pigs. And the feedback wasn't very good, so it didn't go anywhere. And then Rocketdyne hired a new president who came in and talked about variation. And my boss across the VP of quality got nervous because they don't know about questions. So a year later, it was offered again to all the senior directors of operating. And then, somewhere there's some really positive feedback. So a year later, another VP, Jim Albaugh, came in, he led the division of Rockwell, and he's talking about variation and how this guy should know about it. I said, well, I've got this 2-year-old course. And I made a deal with them that he would train his staff, and then they would train their staffs. And we're going to train all 700 people in operations by the end of the year. And it's like March, the year ends in October. And I said to some parents, I said, we're running out of time. I said, well, here's how we're going to do it. You set the date, then we'll start the vote. First session. I set the date, and about 3 weeks before the class, said we're going to go do it. We're going to go do it in 3 weeks. I said, but you've never taken it before. He said, write a script. So I went home and spent a whole week step by step. This is done with viewgraphs. Move the viewgraph from this projector, wrote a 50-page script. His stuff. So we do the session, and then the second session was a month later, because I needed more time to write the script for the second session. And after we did the second session, he says to me, how do you think I did in the second session? And this is a guy that come on to become CEO of Boeing Commercial Real Estate. So he said, how do you think the session? He said, when do you think I read the script? I said, when? He said, on my way to Rockwell Street with the class. So then that, when this, my original plan was that this staff's going to use the script. The more I knew of his staff and more I thought, the best way to fill it is only to let this staff department. So then I said, well, let your directors do the first. And then that put us more interest and more interest. And it got the 7 to 11:30, Thursday morning, Friday morning, noon until. 1 year I did it 100 times. When I retired, I had done it sometimes 4 times in 1 week in 2 different cities. And but the content, of course, evolved. Jim came to me once, he said, do people need to take this class again? I said, people want the same moves. I said, this class is different every time. I said, we don't have 100% retention, 100% absorption. Classes are different. And so between 93 and 2016 was offered, let's say, 300 times. Beginning of 98, we let the world come visit. The first 5 years, we didn't let anybody come see what we're doing. When Yale would go off to conferences on that, I said, you can't tell anyone what we're doing. But how would it turn out? So I would come in and say, try to trash it. And so somebody at another company, I met the guy, liked what they were doing. So beginning of 98, we let people come in and see what we're doing. In ASP meetings, what we were doing, no one had figured out money. So by 98, we opened it to the world, and then the strategy was, we let the world come in. If we have a class, 20 rocket science people, 10 districts, rocket science people get excited, they'll do our world and see what we're doing. And then in 2000, we taken network through some organizations. But there's basically, looking at today, most organizations people have never heard of. That's why it's Red Bead Plus. The Red Bead stuff, lots of people have heard of. But what we'll look at is stuff. So in the presentation, you'll see, I've never had anyone come up to me, showing what we did rocket time, where they say, we do that wrong. Not at all. Not at all. So I left Mountaineer in like 2016. I went to the Deming Institute as a director for 2.5 years. Are we going now?
Yeah, we're going to.
I did that 2.5 years. And then teaching at University of Sedgwick. And then for the last 3 years, I'm a senior technical advisor at Blue Origin. 5 years. Blue Origin, courtesy of coworkers of Tim and I and Dale from Rockland and Blue Pretty big, but this is basic stuff. How? So I'm always working on the projector. So the Red Bead Experiment, which I'll show you some videos. Dr. Deming started this. They somebody created it. And then Deming got exposed to it. And but it's going to borrow your beads. And I said, you want the red beads, white beads, or the red beads, blue beads? It's white. And then there's and then blue and blue. Then there's a video I last watched. A 1-hour lecture by a doctor by the name of Don Berwick. He served in the Obama administration in some senior role in service. He met Dr.
Telling the online participants it will be online shortly.
Oh, what?
Do we have a message up for the people trying to join online so they were not up yet?
I don't know.
I got people saying they can't connect.
You know, spot fee that they're on.
I'm sorry.
Spot fee.
Can't hear you.
But you're not connecting the spot fees.
I don't know what that is. We gave them a link. We gave them a link in a Google Doc to use.
Yeah, I don't know. Ours is for the school website. Like our school platform that we I'm going to give you.
the red bead experiment, both will watch Dr. Deming do it. But Berwick does it with blue beads and red beads. So if I have college students watch the Berwick video, then I talk about blue beads and red beads. Which is why that's the case. And so at that seminar in Florida, we watched Berwick do it. And we'll talk about that. So when I worked with them, I think there's the two of the most frequently visited web pages on the Deming Institute are the 14 points. I don't know in what order. Well, actually, yeah, this will work. I've got slides in here that, if I read them to you, you're on the screen is. So this is the abstract. Beginning in 1980 until its passed in 83, Dr. Deming presented it. Seminar done this 4 days with Dr. Deming, for which I was one of 500 people to attend the very last. It was at the Hilton of University City, near the Hollywood Bowl. And so foreman was not to attend, because it was billed as its very last seminar. Well, the first day they gave out a schedule for the next 6 months. So he arrived on Tuesday. He was wheeled in a wheelchair. He had phlebitis, so he couldn't walk. He had a pacemaker put in 2 years earlier. He was, the phone because of the phlebitis. Prostate cancer spread to his lungs. So as he was lecturing for the first hour, the Springley's dead in the bill. He was in bad shape. A nurse, after an hour, wheeled him off stage. 3 assistants would get up. 2 hours later, he comes back. And so day by day, he got weaker and weaker. Every day at lunch, people. He says, look, 2 of his books were handed out. His last one, the economics, was just published last summer. So every day after lunch, there'd be. Well, I was up the 4th day with a mat, like a 1-inch board. I didn't bring the photo. All I wanted to do was with anything. So I stand in line, give the man, who was looking at me and said, "What's this?" I spent more time explaining. I have been in, should have brought them to work. 2 autographs taken December 10th, 1993. He died on the 20th. So I had what could be amongst his last autographs. So I was the next day going to send him a Christmas card with the photo that was going to go in the card, and then photo. Son, who's it's cooking father. He was like 4 months old, and our daughter. And they were reading the economics. And so each of them has that photograph side by side with them. So in this number, we did before me. The other thing I was going to say is for 4 days, the 4 of us in Rotterdam were sitting in the same church. Each sitting by right with the rabbi. We did nothing all day for 4 days and sit there in deep prayer for Dr. Deming. So it's like the 3rd day. This guy went to one of the organizers of the seminar and wanted to meet the person in charge. And so next thing you know, Nancy and I, in charge of organizing Dr. Deming seminars around the world, for which 1,200 people in the room paying $1,000 each. So her company ran this, and the to my left, the rabbis to my right, the rabbis berating her. And I was like, how can you do this to this man? She looks at him and says, you don't understand, there's no place you'd rather be. And it calmed down. So I met Dr. Deming twice in 1990 when he spoke in Connecticut for living. And the first time I ever saw him, I never asked him a question because it didn't make any sense to me. It made no sense to me at all. So I couldn't ask him a question. So I met him twice and never asked him a question. In my better work with him. There's this mechanism. Great big experiment without serving as the factory to like workers up and then foreman to watch the video. With implications. Implications go far beyond manufacturing. Dr. Deming uses this experiment to remind us of the performance is a function of how the overall system is managed. What else? This presentation expands the implications of the red news. White peoples. Most people that do the red Dr. Deming did very subtly. So in the first and then the plus, the title is about the white beads. And the white beads is stuff that most people didn't fun. So part two is called well, and they have this game show on Saturday. Wait, don't tell me. Right. So this game show is called Wait, Please Tell Us. And so opening remarks, wait, please tell us, and then they're in speeds, and then wait, please tell us. So for how long do you go? Oh. Oh. So,
Working on it.
oh, yeah. So if I turn it off, so 5 weeks ago, yesterday, I had 2 inches. 2% of the world has a defect in this, which is like a little bubble, a side pouch on this ball effect. So 2% of the world's population has this pouch. And 4% of the 2% end up with a hole in their small intestine. And it happened during a business trip. So, I spent 10 days in the hospital. And, can't walk as fast as I used to. So 4%. That's better than the chance of winning the lottery. Yeah. So the next slide is we'll get to this. So I met Dr. Deming twice, never answered the question. It was after a 4-day seminar with him. When I saw him at the deck and I watched him do 3 like hour-and-a-half lectures, it's been nothing to me. That was just. But in 1987, I met Judith, who at that time would have been early 60s. And I spent what? So the Deming community, people I watched back then, watching from the countless hours of Dr. I spent little time with Dr. Deming, but I spent more time with Taguchi than just worked out, and more time with Russ Haythall than any. So we're going to talk about them. So Dr. Taguchi was born in Japan in 1924 and died in 2012. He visited Rockland. Gave lectures. And he, little did I know, his work is the intricacy of the white beads. So when I saw Dr. Deming do the great big white bead experiment, part of it I didn't like it is that they never talked about the white beads. And I presented the red bead experiment 3 times. That I don't like it. What takes several hours to explain with a red bead experiment, I think I can explain it in a half. So to me, it's a long way to go. And when you watch, we'll watch enough of them to go through it. And then Rasnikov, I met 2003 or so. And he came to Rocketime once a year for about 4 or 5 years and gave full-day lectures. So Russ used to, he came out the first time in, let's say, March or whatever the year was. And then the next year, 5,000 a day. But he wouldn't come out in 1 day, so he came to 2 different sites. And then after the second year, I said, Russ, I want to come speak at Ramadan on a Friday. Speak for the Instrument Thinking Network on Saturday, but we don't pay. And Ramadan will pay your airfare. And as president of the Instrument Thinking Network, I'd like you to do a pro bono presentation. No. So like several years later, every year he came out, and every year there'd be 30 of us would go to a steakhouse, and have this big dinner, and they would build Rocketime. And one of those nights, I said, Bill, why don't you invite Russ to speak it into it? already did.
The people that was next to me and said, they think they, something worked.
And I said, "Remember you guys was digging into it?" He said, "No." I said, "Would you reconsider?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Would you put thoughts left as well?" "Yes." I said, "Could I come to Philadelphia and have you do 4 1-hour with a around the world?" He said, "Yes." So he came out on a regular basis. He's 5 minutes went for him. He actually he didn't speak. He was on the panel at the end, for which he had recorded. I can't watch it. So he was on Sunday mornings that year. We had Russ in the middle. Most of it knew who Russ was. And either side of them, one side was a Boeing senior executive, and the other side was a woman with a making company in Boston. And I was at the podium. So I had a microphone and go around the room and these questions. We gave the microphone to Russ because most didn't know who Russ was. So Russ says, leadership training is a sham. You can't train anybody to be a leader. Then he goes on to say, corporations aren't business. He said they're in a business to maintain the lifestyles of those who run them. And I heard him say that many times. I didn't face it. But right around that time, one of it starts going around the ring, and I'm wondering, what is going on? Why is this guy walking around the room with a microphone? Eventually, Tim went around the room, and I went up to that executive and I said, "Why is this microphone, Tim?" He said, "That guy on stage next to Russ used to be my boss. He was a..." And he said, "That was a ticking time bomb that I was trying to defuse." So I can't watch that. And I spent all week dealing with people that wanted Russ to apologize to them. So we'll talk about Russ. And so what else? So now, then we can start off the seminar by saying why. Say the learner identified the difference. Dr. Deming had what he called 14 points of management, which are on the web page. Number 1, create constant purpose. Number 2, adopt the new philosophy. This is done in the 1980s. Cease dependence on inspection to achieve quality. End the practice of awarding business on price tag alone. How many of you at home buying on? That's right. I can look for the lowest cost.
But if it's a battery,
Yeah. There is something a lot more expensive.
target for this, or, there's same battery, just different sources.
Who's the video runner?
We're not going to very strong protect.
Was that?
We don't have a very strong protect.
Oh, is that what we're looking? So the new projector is weak. But is it streaming?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So,
We can't see.
so can the folks online see the slides?
Not yet. I'm getting there.
In my office above my desk is Wilson's projector, which I thought.
Hey, school projectors. Bring Wilson's tomorrow.
The certificate of not buying on price tag alone is that you can buy it on price tag, but then that does not include the cost of use. Right? So you need to think of something that's cheap, but it's hard to use. It could be something that's really it's cheap, but it's flimsy. Because it's flimsy, it's a headache. So what Dr. Deming is speaking to is there's the price to buy something, and then well, traditional management around the world only looks at things in isolation, not as a system. And so when you look at things in isolation, you buy on price tag. I mean, you may be at a company where your job is, I'll give you an example from Rocketdyne. Before I left Rocketdyne, about a year before, a cost reduction strategy, Rocketdyne was going to outsource janitorial services. It was the lowest level union job. So the announcement went out, and we're going into the very first day. Everything is good until I use the paper towels to dry my hand. And the they were on Friday. And I immediately knew who was paying for them. So that the stand on the paper towels. What does that cost right now? What? Well, good. Well, I'd probably go straight to the second front. Much more price tag alone. Too bad to paper towels. On Monday, think about it. How does paper towels affect the fitness affect Robert?
People snoring, you see.
No, it's not around. It's not so much around. Long hands. Why is that? We're building a government, $400 an hour. So the goodness is by Friday, the paper towels are that good.
It's nice to use microphone.
Oh, sure. It's on? Okay, good. So people are online listening? Oh, fantastic. Okay, we get this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
suggest to change to the bit. School room.
Bill, what we might be able to do is get you to go sit in front of that TV and move the recording off.
One exception.
Yeah.
Nope.
There's a Google slide. What's that? Your file's too big to play as a Google slide.
No. No, it's fine. Just take it download it. Sorry, Bill. Well, wait. So is. Oh, so we're waiting for it to download? Yeah. Okay.
Why are we not just moving those?
Sneaker.
Over there.
Yeah, sneaker.
I mean, assuming you have an appropriate adapter and plug into it.
Yeah, leave it there.
All right.
Couldn't bring the camera in.
Oh, you did?
So they wouldn't be able to see the slide.
Yes.
They are. Good, ready to go? Is it streaming?
It is streaming.
All right, opening remarks. Wait, please tell us. The Bead Experiment. Wait, please tell us.
You have to do it. You can do it with the remote. You can use the remote to move the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready. No, we're ready. Go.
So this is Dr. Gucci.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Dr. Deming, there's Dr. Deming, there's 14 points. The other point I want to mention is improve constantly and forever the system of production and service. That's the big one. Then a bunch of others. Yep, that's why it's highlighted in red. Influencer. All right, so in 1992, Dr. Deming must have spent about 3 hours together. He did a Google search. Somewhere in there, Russ says, characteristic plan that complex as well as possible, and that's done what? The question is, how would you complete that sentence? Take a complex system, break it into parts as well as possible, and that's done the system what? Okay.
The system is efficient.
It's sufficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what happens here is, it's almost 50-50 that people are saying, will perform well. Actually, it's probably maybe 2/3 will think it'll be okay. Maybe 1/3 will say maybe not. That's what Russ said. He said, if that's done, it's just going to behave well. And then he said, oh, come on. And that's absolutely false. And if you take an airplane, break it into parts, you take a wing and break it into parts, and everybody works on a part. But what's missing, it's not a part, it's part of the also. And so at home, we understand the of and term. Because at home, we put the parts together. But at work, we either make the parts or we're stuck with putting them together, but we don't do both. So the big thing is, Russell, the three of them, Deming, Taguchi, and Akon, are all about the of and not the part. Most management is about the part with no understanding of the of. But when we go home, we understand the of. Because at home, everything we do, we understand the context. But at work, the context is too big. If somebody says, I need you to go buy an orange, and Laura says, here's an orange. But at home, Laura has a use for the orange in mind. So a system is not the sum of its parts, it's the product of the interactions. The art of managing interactions is very different to the management of actions, and this requires this transition for effective management. And that word effective is in the title of this forum, because maybe Higgins came up with dozens of titles. Rush was all about effective first, efficient second. Efficient is about doing things faster and cheaper. Effective is asking, why are we doing this? So what Rush would say is, we'd be better to do, let's try. So we're better to do the right thing wrong than the wrong thing. You'd say that the brighter you do the wrong thing, the wronger you become. And he gave a keynote on that in 2006. So Frederick Taylor, from the first management consultant in the world, more well known than he said, the management is the art of knowing what you want to do and then seeing that they do it in the best and cheapest manner. Who is the they? Right? The they. Right? Peter Drucker, management is a multi-purpose organ that manages a business and manages managers, and managers work and work. That's Drucker. Henry Thael from France, management is to forecast, to plan, to organize, to command, to coordinate, and control activities of others. Mary Parker Follett at Harvard, way ahead of her time. Management is the art of getting things done through much different perspective. And there's my explanation. Management is the activity of allocating an organization's resources, ideas, finances, equipment, as guided by concepts and strategies. So I look at management as an activity, not a title. I'm not against the title of manager. But I think, what if everyone in the organization managed their organizations where they set for the greater good? And so because that's not one person's job, that's everyone's job. So I look at, we take inputs in an organization, we integrate them to an output. These are resources, right? Resources, when I mentioned ideas, finances. The resources are integrated using tools and software, handlers, machine tools. These are tools of quality management tools. Tools are about efficiency, not effectiveness. Tools are the implements, like a garden tool, They're using complete tasks, techniques are the methods of how they're employed. Nothing wrong with tools and techniques, but Dr. Deming's work was bigger than that. Most management is about tools. And so what's missing is concepts and strategies. Concepts and strategies are what differentiates Deming from everyone else. The tools of Deming and others are the same, but the concepts are different. So these are a bunch of quality management concepts, right? Robust design involves not issues work, but forget about robust design. All of those others, other than Deming philosophy, are about managing parts. Managing parts is Frederick Taylor, 1900. That's what we're doing today, managing parts. Concepts represent abstract ideas, both fundamental building blocks, thoughts, and beliefs. Strategies represent what are we going to do with it. So my work with Blue Origin, we're looking at Deming's ideas as a concept, and the strategy is how do we bring this to the organization. So tools and techniques are efficiency. That's in the title. Efficiency, faster, cheaper. Right? Effectiveness is unique to a concept. So you can think of, as a national government, we can find better and better ways to build a prison. What Egbert would say, is a prison the best use of our resources? What if we put that money for better education? That's very interesting. And then the idea is we imagine these as a feedback system. So the machine that changed the world, many people to Toyota production system. Then the researchers at MIT in the late 80s said it was 70-some automobile assembly plants in 17 countries. Found out that all the US companies were about the same, all the US companies were about the same, the Japanese companies were about the same. They were looking at how parts come together. They weren't looking upstream. They were looking at final assembly. Now, what's neat about final assembly, you can learn by how things come together and look at them. So the US and the MIT folks said that's mass production. Then they said the Europeans, that's craftsmanship. And they said, well, the Japanese, that's a little bit different. They come up with the term lean. Lean is Frederick Taylor for the 21st century. It's got nothing to do with entrepreneurship. It's about efficiency. Getting rid of things that don't add value. When you look at things in isolation, you don't see the upcoming value. Right? Why should we spend more on paper towel? Let's watch how it's used. So in this book, people learn about the principles of lean. And I use this in my graduate classes. I want people to understand this is it's got little to do with opportunity. Value is what the customer is willing to pay for. Identify now the value stream. After removing waste from the value stream, ensure that the flow of remaining steps is smooth without delays. The goal of a pull-based system is to limit inventory, work in process items to ensure that the requisite materials and information is available for smooth flow. I'm not disagreeing with that. Every employee should strive to deliver products based on the customer needs. That I have some issues. So what to call it? So these are telephones. And the reason this came up is Charles Hankin is I never met him, but I exchanged email with him when Russ Egfeld died. They were email. Like I sent the email to Charles Hankin, Peter Sanger, at the time. Not my correspondence with Charles Hankin. He's I think taught in London School of Economics. Guy, not that long ago. Our use of old words to describe new things and hide the emerging future from us. And so as long as we look at that phone, keep calling that phone, keep calling that phone, we're back to the old use, not the new use. Think about the term smart. As long as we call it a phone, we go back to an historic explanation of it. And this is what's, you can learn a lot about an organization by, intentionally talk about this. You listen to the words, and their words are very revealing about how people think. And so, here, writer, social philosopher, and management theorist could presciently imagine a great new corporate world where employees work remotely, jobs were outsourced, and workers had portfolio careers, work for themselves and contract their skills to companies. He died when he was 92. This is, I think he died. He died in less than He was the son of an Irish Protestant biker, brought a humanistic social philosophy to business. That's what Mary Parker thought was doing at Harvard Business School in 1910. A humanistic view of management. That's what Dr. Deming was doing. He said businesses should be like communities, employees like citizens who have rights and privileges and share in the profits. It was a common sense, he reasoned, that people were more likely to be committed to their work in a company's mission if they had a hand in shaping it. Ranked among the pantheon of management thinkers, that includes Drucker, Peters, Michael Porter, and Bellows, who predicted organizational trends years before. And so this book just came out. So I just downloaded it, I haven't listened to it. It's a
Live stream is down again, just FYI.
my soul is down.
What?
You working on it?
What's that?
All the
Okay.
our live stream is down.
Okay.
All working on it. Proceed, but just.
Well,
Yeah,
it's being recorded. So it's being recorded, but people can't see it. So I mean, is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So then when you download it later, you can watch it.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. I say, when you look at Deming and Akoff and Handy, there aren't a lot of those people alive today. There's a whole trash, absolute trash, including when I think about there's some interesting connections. I was invited to teach for 4 years, 5-year class of quality management at the number 1 or number 2 business school in the country. They alternate number 1. Harvard and Kellogg and Northwestern alternate number 1, number 2. So I did a 5-week class in Deming's ideas at Kellogg, 97, 98, 99, and 2000. And students in the class would tell me, what you're presenting conflicts with what we're learning in the class. Yeah. And what I think is Harvard Medical School as behind as their perfection, having all the required or desirable elements, qualities, and characteristics as good as it is possible to be, having all. What does all mean? Right? We looked for all the ideas. How do you know you looked for all the ideas? So anytime somebody uses all, they look at them and say, all? Really? All? We've looked everywhere. Really? And so I mean, when people you throw the word all out. You can say it's been fine. Don't throw that at me. Absolute, complete. Make something completely free from faults. I want to ask you this. Once something is perfect, can you improve it? Not based on this definition. Perfect means done. So when lean management talks about striving for perfection, I say, what about continual improvement? So then, when I talk to students that are involved in lean, which I now and then do or give presentations, but I students in my lesson of lean background, I say, you can believe in continual improvement or you can believe in perfection, but you can't believe in both. It's one of the other. Perfection is a finish line. Focusing on perfection is saying, when will it be done? What Dr. Deming's talking about is the journey. Now, I'm not saying everything is worthwhile to improve, but to conclude that something is perfect is presumptuous. And the founding fathers knew that. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide the common defense and promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States. They didn't set it perfect. And they knew there was a difference. Right? And so John Garamendi from California School of Economics wrote, a more perfect union implies that the progress of the American experience is never complete. The adjectives more coupled with perfect lead to conclude that my task as a congressman is to seek to improve the state of our union while knowing that my efforts, indeed our collective efforts at any time, will still be imperfect. Be left with those who follow and continue to fight to improve the union. So the lead people say, well, Bill, we're being perfect and striving for perfect. It's way up. And I say, you believe it exists and I don't. But they're saying, well, but it's way out there. If you believe in perfect, if you believe in continual improvement, there does not exist. Continuous, Mark 5, I'm going to write the extension in space-time with sequence. So better has better is nature is what we're born to be, so refresh with a water source from only carefully selected. So then he's talking about better has no finish line. It doesn't mean it's worthwhile to improve it. Right? I mean, not everything's worth improving, but what we're saying is maybe it's not worthwhile to do it. That's not to say it's not a finish line, it's just saying how it's not our time. We can't improve everything through. We have to make choices. And what we do at home is we spend our time to save time. We spend $1 to save $2. If we're doing home remodeling, we've got a finite budget. We look for what's the best way to spend that money on the house. But the last thing you're going to do is spend more money on the house than you can sell it for. So it's not improved forever. It's finding where's the best leverage. Benchmark in the late 1960s from a few years ago, believe it or not, within the last 10 years. So we could have spoken. He was a plant manager for Ford. He routinely had this assembly team buy competitors' cars. Why? And so this is a quote from the CEO of Xerox. He says, I never the friend told me, while he was running a Ford plant in the 60s, at that time, Ford and the other automakers didn't believe you could assemble a car without a rubber mallet to bend the parts together. The rest of the parts were known as snap fit. So at his Ford plant, they manufactured together, they went together mallet. So his Ford plant had a term snap fit. So he wondered what others did. So they bought backwards cars and taken them apart, and they all assembled like Fords. And so I would have liked to ask them is, where did that thought come from? This is why You want to know how an organization organizes? Watch how things come together. Right? And so Rocketdyne was owned by Boeing. They tell people Seattle that a 747 is not a bunch of parts that fly in close formation. But that is how Boeing works. So let's go back up. So they're routinely buying owners. Then they bought a car made by a competitor. Took it apart, never used a nail to put it together. Kept quickly the results and said, do it again. Twice no mallets were used. He then called out senior people from Ford Corporate. They come out to hear about this, meet with the team. The senior executive said to the team, the customer will never notice the difference. Pip was so pissed off he quit and went to work for Cervix in 1969. He said the executive said, customer will never know the difference. And he said, they trotted off happiest times. Thinking, yep, that's what the boss said, that's what it is. What I showed you in the presentation is how we achieved 100% snap clip hardware body time. And no one had ever done anything. It was a Toyota pickup truck. The customer will never know this. All right, this is the way we plus dominate. And so this is that's the logo there. So, all right, so Dr. Deming said, in God we trust all of his ring data. Dr. Deming said that you cannot measure it, you can't manage it. True or false? False. He quoted Lloyd Nielsen. He said the most important figures that one needs to manage, needs for management are unknown and unknowable, but successful management must nonetheless account for them. This is from Dr. Deming. He said, we should learn as we go on. The results of most activities in management cannot be measured. For example, the benefit of training cannot be measured because the benefit shows up in the future. Those of you that have kids, why do you have kids? Because the benefit shows up in the future.
Choose your role.
They're going to choose your environment. And the idea is that I think all of our activities that are gone are based on a sense that what we get is more than we put in. The benefit. We don't knowingly go at activities that are a waste of time. They turn out to be a waste of time. So our daughter, who'll be here tonight, her and I went to see Coldplay at the Rose, at the Hollywood Bowl maybe 15 years ago. At the time, it was the most expensive concert I ever been to, maybe $250 each. It was worth every penny. But I bought a Coldplay coffee mug for $20, and after one washing in the dishwasher, it was white. Monica and I, we went to see Coldplay a couple years ago, 2 years ago, at the Rose Bowl, maybe $600, worth every penny to me. But why do we do things? Because it's worth our while. Now again, the values may not be the same. So why do we spend money on training? Because we think the benefit is Dr. Deming's idea is only product manufacturing. False. So now we're putting that into people saying that all of this example so don't be confused. Yeah. And so Gordon Brown's on the right. Gordon was once a board member of the Intuit Thinking Network. And so, and on the left, Paulo Lopez was a new hire at Rocketdyne, sat outside my office. And I don't know where the foot was taken, but Paulo, like 2 or 3 months after he joined, I went in to work on a Saturday. And he says, Bill, you just got your haircut. And I said, oh, there, so, you know, he was around for a while. Anyway, really, not this. So he said, you just got your haircut. I said, oh, you're so perceptive. He says, where do you go to get your haircut? I said, this place on Charlotte Way, the other side of the soda. He says, how long have you been going there? I said, 7 years. Then he starts giggling. He's like, and I said, what's so funny? He said, you work in the continuous improvement team, and you go to the same place for 7 years. I said, I've been married to the same person for 14 years. There she is. Well, our Christians have found my 14s. I'll walk you through this. We're not going to watch the videos. But the videos, for those watching, I'll give you links to watch the videos. And I'll give all of you the links to go watch the videos. And it's about watching this. This is a short. This is short. See if this works. So think of how long it takes for 6 people to do that 4 times each. So even the videos of Dr. Deming doing it in the Deming's new webpage are truncated. But you can find videos, it's like an hour to do that. But, sorry, in the last for later. So there are the red beads and the white beads. There's the process, mix the materials, produce the beads, inspection, recorded results. And in designing this, when I thought I would watch the videos, then I'll say, okay, we need 4 views, 1 workers, 2 views inspectors, 1 is inspector general, and then Chuck was going to record the results. But we're going to fast forward to it. In the new economics of chapter 7, Dr. Deming has the results for 6 people going through it. And after week 1, you get a set of results like that. So what does traditional management say about a set of results like that? We're going to fire Tim, right? And what about David? One, right? And then we go back to the one again. Now what? Right? Tim improved. What about David? Promotion went to his head. Right? And then again. Right? And then again. So traditional management looks at those results and says, Larry, you're going to get promoted. Terrence, Sarah, it's time for you to look elsewhere. And so Dr. Deming's last very seminar, he did this routine. And then, okay, yeah, let's look at this. I think it's fine. Well, what Dr. Deming says in that video, and I'll include that in the links to this one. He said everyone was trying their best. But the system was, and they said, well, people are trying hard. Well, the system was fundamentally designed to create red beads. And the system is far bigger than those people. And what Dr. Deming would next do is instead of looking at the results of the table, he would plot them in the order in which they were taken. And you get ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. And that's called variation. And the idea is, why would you expect the same number each time? So instead of getting all excited about the ups and downs are what we should expect. I don't think it's in there, but 2-3 years ago, I bought a window thermometer with a display, and whatever it was, you can see through it. And so one day, Mom came home and the windows were open. She said, why are the windows open? She said, it's 90 degrees outside. I said, no, it's 77. I forgot to remove the label. So if you see the same number day in and day out, that something's wrong. And it didn't dawn on me that something was wrong. So then, if you understand variation, that variation, Right, so that makes sense, is instead of looking at the ups and downs and assigning them to people, the ups and downs come from the system, which includes the people, whoever bought the beads, design of the bowl, design of the paddle, and all those things. And what Dr. Deming went on to say is, you can take the variation in those numbers and calculate what's known as an upper and lower control limit. And those limits come from the data. So the more variation in the results, the wider are the limits. So if you want to make the limits closer together, you have to change the system. But if you don't do that, you're going to get those results. And so where's all that variation come from? Well, every time you put the beads back in, they don't go to the same location. Every time you put it in, it's a little different. So if all those ways of doing it are different, then the results are different. So then they learned from Walter Short, one of his mentors, was the predictable stable variation that he calls are the commonly occurring things that go on all the time upstream in the system. And as long as those things are always changing not the same way. So you could plot miles per gallon for your car, it goes up and down. Why? Because every drop is not the same. Every level of octane is not the same. Every mile in road is not the same. So if the inputs change commonly, then the output changes commonly. So instead of expecting the same result, the 10% variation, same means within these limits. It doesn't mean identical. Twins are not identical. Clones are identical. Identical only exists on paper, not in writing. But in the real world, identical doesn't exist. So what Dr. Deming is saying is take the results up to some point in time, look to the past, calculate the limits, and then what do we think about the next data point? Right? What goes on in the future? Well, here, it's the same ball, same paddle, same process. So I look at that as a closed system. If the system is closed, would you expect the result outside that system? No. But if the beads are new each time, because you've got suppliers of different beads, and the paddle is different each time, then the system is open. So the role of the control charts is to pick up changes in an open system. So then the sooner you notice data which is outside, the sooner you know you've got a supplier of data change, which is different than the usual changes. And that then becomes known as a special cause. And special cause means that something in the input is beyond what we usually do. And that can be the supplier went to a cheaper supplier and ended up with results that are dramatically different. They come from a different family. So common causes are things that are common to the current system. A special cause is something which is system. Well, the control chart is to pick up as soon as you can something outside our system. Because the sooner we do that, we can stop it, go back to what we're used to. Maybe not what, but what we're used to. So what do the great beings represent? And we think of them as defects, things the customer doesn't want. The customer wants white beads, not red beads. And so, and again, I've got it here tonight, I say, Allison, what are the red beads in the classroom? A skateboard that doesn't work. A projector that doesn't work. A screen that doesn't work. The broken window. Right? I mean, learning red beads. Don't buy them. What do the white beads represent? Until outside a projector that works, a door that closes, a scanner that works. So in this very simple world, the red beads are the defects, things that are bad, and the white beads are the things that are good. Now we'll talk about beyond the red beads. So in August 21, on some business magazine, manufacturing magazine, Zero Defects. Why do you need to make zero defect manufacturing part of your culture? Zero defects means no red beads. Traditional management is we want white beads, not red beads, and the end of the improvement is when you get rid of the red beads. So all this talk in the article, so I give this to the graduate students in my graduate class, and it's all about, read this closely. You can have fast, cheap, and bright shoes too, but today's manufacturers need to live in a world where they accomplish all three. And this is again what I use as an example in classes, focusing on the elimination of defects is a line. That's how most companies operate. We don't want any red beads. Phil Crosby, a big name back in the 60s, zero defect another way of saying do it right the first time. Quality is conformance to requirements. So imagine what would happen in your organizations in the beginning of operation, opening of operations tomorrow. All processes produced 100% white beads are named this way forever. What changes when you begin to imagine to occur hour by hour, day by day, month by month, year by year, is more and more people realize there's no more red beads. So I first asked this question when Greg White came to class one morning. He's a quality engineer, rocket contract. Two people in class that week. And he came in and shaking his head. What's going on, Greg? He says, all I'm doing is processing non-conformance. That's all I'm doing is processing non-conformances on the spatial domains. And April stopped the other person. And I said, Greg, what would happen? Blah, blah, blah. And he says, he said, well, I wouldn't have a job. And a few minutes later, he says, there'd be no reason for my organization. That's what this guy did. It's all great. And so when I asked the students, I've been doing a seminar for 80 people, like a 2-day program, and the person that had to talk about the red beads and the red charts and all that, and I would get up and say, so we're learning from Dr. Deming that variation is caused by the system, blah, blah, blah. And I would ask this question, I'd say, Dr. Deming talked about continual improvement. So I said, if we get to 100% white beads everywhere, are we done? Or can we still improve? And if we can't improve, what does improvement mean? And people would say, well, we can make the white beads cheaper. I said, fine. We can make them faster. I said, fine. But can you make them better? Then they say yes, and I'd say how? And they'd say, we can make them faster, we can make them cheaper. I know that. Even in the graduate class, I do. Yes, 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 but when a person would say, what does better mean? Crickets. So how do you make the white beads better if they're all white?
More consistency, less variation between the beads.
So what does that mean?
The size, the weight, the shine, or whatever.
Yeah, the deal is, all the white beads are not the same shade of white. They're not the same diameter. They're not the same center print. I just spent a half hour waiting for that answer in the graduate class. I'm serious. Right? And so, Tim and I took a class with Bureau Hackenberg years ago up in Wisconsin. And there, one of the examples Hero used is, when you go into a supermarket, people sort through the fruit. So one of the questions I asked was, when you walked into the supermarket, and I told you all the fruit was not bruised or otherwise physically damaged, would people sort through it? then you've got people that say no, then people yes, why? Because all the orchards aren't the same, right? So every day we're sorting through parking spots. That's managing white weight variation. So when Allison, again, looking here tonight, so, tonight I took the 2 or 3 day seminar with Hero, and I'm thinking variation and fruit. So shortly thereafter, Allison was like, and we went to the supermarket to buy a couple of wines and some marbles. And I said, Allison, go get the wine. She said, what's the wine? I said, the wine. So she walked up to the lines, picked one up, and put it back. Picked up another one. And I'm like, I said, why'd you do that? And she articulated because they're not all the same. If I ask adults to explain that, why she sorted, because her mother does that. They cannot articulate what you did, but Allison did it free. They're not all the same. Well, this model of interchangeable parts implies we're all the same. And so Taylor's at the leading edge of everything being interchangeable. Things are not absolutely interchangeable. So in this one class, there's a guy with his arms crossed. He says, I don't sort through oranges. I said, how do you want? I'll buy it out of there. And then I looked at his hand, and a wedding ring on his left hand. I said, see here, got a wedding ring on his left hand. I said, did you sort? So the acceptability question is, has a specific requirement been met? There's only, Bonnie, how many answers to that question?
327.
No, 2. And so when I met Bonnie years ago, I was doing this presentation, I said, how many answers are there to the question? 2. Then I said, how many ways are there to meet a set of requirements? And I said, like 347, and somebody said, oh, no, I said infinite. And the guy said, infinite? I said, okay, fine, 347. But saying, does a car have gas? Yes or no? It's different than how much gas. And so quality management is about things being absolute. So has a requirement been met? Yes or no? When Tim's boss years ago gave me a quality, got excited because we achieved snap that hardware. He said, you got to go to the NASA headquarters, talk to the number one guy at NASA about what we're doing. So I called the guy, I said, I'm coming next Friday, and he knew I was coming. So it's a long way to go. But he says, what are we going to talk about? Lean in 6 Sigma. I said, no, more than that. He said, what? I said, we're going to talk about the theory of interchangeable parts. And he's like, well, what is that? I said, what's the letter grade of everything NASA buys from contractors? What's the letter grade requirement? He says A+. I said, no, it's not. He said, what is it? I said, D-. What do you mean D-? I said, your quality is pass fail. D- is a passing grade. I said, is a D- the same as an A+? He said, no. I said, that's what I want to share with you. We treat them as the same. Only the Deming philosophy treats them as different. Missing is the variation question. How many ways are there to meet set requirements? So this is what they call managing actions. Managing actions is when you meet your requirements without talking to anyone else. So I want you to meet a set of requirements. I want you to meet a set of requirements. I want you to meet. See, managing actions says you do whatever you want and you don't have to talk. It should work okay. All right? At home, you aren't the same person. At home, you don't do this without understanding that. And so, right, we go to dinner, you don't order the wine without knowing the meal. One depends on the other. This is part, all this Crosby stuff is doing, which is a lot of is about looking at things in isolation. When somebody says this is good, that's in isolation. Right? Imagine a football game where Patrick Mahomes throws the ball, and upon leaving his hand, it's met all the requirements. And that commentator says, Mahomes has thrown a big pass from about down to the commercial. That's laughable. Right? In football, quality is measured by what the ball caught. That's integration. But in non-linear companies, quality is measured when at least my hands is good, that's all that matters. What Deming's talking about is how well was it received? Right? It possesses quality, the pass possesses quality, and it was catchable. That's managing interactions. And so here's something about bowling. And there's my wife's bowling ball and shoes, and they go on that back. What's that? Has he done this to you before?
Oh. Get better about it.
She just sent me photos of you doing this. So we went along as a family. It was like Allison's first year in the high school swim team, so all the parents and all the kids go bowling. And after going bowling, I walked down the hallway, and there's one with a bowling ball. And I said, why is it there? She said, that's close. So it wasn't for the record, it was about 13. So I called him over and I said, why is the bowling ball here? And he said, Mom said, put it in the bedroom. He knows he's famous, right? So at my time, Mom's the jokes was, are you going to leave the bowling ball in the doorway for me? But for a non-Deming company, does he need permission to do this? No. It is, can anyone in the organization meet requirements and what they deliver any way they want? And can you complain? No. So he goes, where's the teamwork? I can deliver a string of D- and he can't complain. Why can't he complain? Because it's good. So I delivered one ball in the doorway, and he said, is it ball in the doorway? And I said, it met requirements. It meant your requirements. What Dr. Taguchi's talking about is not where the requirements met, but how were they met, and does that affect others? See, at home, how we meet requirements, because we know it affects the next person, and we are the next person, we don't do this to ourselves at home. I work with people at Rocket Line that are receiving end of things that don't meet requirements, they can't get it together, and there's no one to complain to. Because it met requirements. Those are all white beads. This is her point. All those beads have variation. So managing the variation of the white beads is in part how you avoid red beads and how you improve integration. Most organizations don't understand that. I've only seen that mindset in the Deming philosophy. And Dr. Deming learned that from Dr. Taguchi. And I knew Taguchi before I knew Deming. So when I saw the red bead experiment, I'm thinking the white beads have variation. What's the big deal? But managing the variation of the white beads is what we do at home. Because at home, we own integration. So here's the Rocky Mountain example. There are 68 inch and $500 million development program in the mid-90s, 18 feet tall. 3 of them would go on this heavy Delta IV launching multi-billion-dollar payloads for the Air Force. The last vehicle was 12, so this is out of production. That's the main combustion chamber, where the oxygen, liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen come out. And the design our colleagues had in mind is to, they had a plate roughly 30 inches diameter. And the idea was that there'd be 628 holes in concentric rings around that, roughly 3/10 of an inch diameter. Right. And then if you turn it sideways and look at the cross section, in each of those holes, with a tube, which has a tube within it, so it's called a coax injector. So through the center, I don't know the height of it, but there's one thing the other, but they mix downstream, not upstream, downstream. And to keep them from mixing prematurely, the tube and the hole have to be joined together. And the joining process is called brazing. Brazing. So someone about that said brazing, it says, that's like the cheese in a grilled cheese sandwich. That's the cheese. So the braised oil goes in between, and then you put it in a furnace, elevated temperature, pay for $15,000. And ideally, you get a nice fillet top and bottom. Prior to 1996, the best we ever got was 85% of the billets, worst case 50, which means we're going to braise another $15,000. There was a concern that the metal couldn't tolerate another braise cycle, so don't even do it this way, they were told. But 2 colleagues, Michael and who I worked with at Blue Orange, and Felix Delgado, who was here in America on the South a few months ago, dealing with designer, they got together, and their mindset based on this understanding was, the reason they don't braise is that we never pay attention to the gap between the tube and the holes. And so they ran studies and found out what was the ideal clearance between the two. Right? In a non-Deming company, who owns that clearance? Nobody. One person owns one part, the other owns the other part, but nobody owns. So what happens is, what happens in hole machining? The machinist will make the hole the smallest place. Because you can always make it bigger. And what about the tube? They make it as large as possible, so you can always make it smaller. Neither one of them cares about the gap. Right? Who wants a gap? Nobody. They started off with what's the ideal gap, then went to both teams, understood the processes, and moved them together to get the right gap. No one has ever come up to me and said, that's what we do at our company. That's called managing variation is a system. "100% of the fillets were achieved in one cycle through the entire production of our years.
18, 28.
I think 6 and 7. In fact, at some point, the 628 holes became 1,019, and every one braised in one cycle. 1,019 is higher performance. It was a minimal risk. And so anytime I would say everyone braised in one cycle, Felix would say, except for one, they used the wrong braise oil. So this at Rockland was a routine. But all the people continued to bang their partner together. because they didn't buy into this. And so when Felix walked past my office, back in the mid-90s, late 90s, I say, Felix, how are things going? He said, Bill, if I had a baseball bat, so I bought him a Louisville Slugger miniature baseball bat years ago. And it says, to Felix Delgado, Rocket Line Slugger, keep swinging for the fences. So instead of minding the park, we minded the gap. And the idea becomes, in a Deming company, we have a choice of one or the other. It's a lot of work. We're only making one. Maybe it's not worth the effort. So it's called rocket science. Not only do we know how to mind the gap, we knew when not to. It becomes a choice. Not only did this hardware brace in one cycle, and that was done in development, in production, there are people inspired by that dramatically improve other aspects of integration and performance by minding gaps that no one else thought of. So one guy came, and we opened, this is what we would, I said, up until 1998, we didn't let anybody see what we were doing in terms of minding gaps. That was an inside secret. And then the thought was, with these results, let's let the world see what we're doing. And then that excitement would inspire more excitement. And we had people want to come join us because of that. And then 2 years later, we're at the end something another. One day, the president of Chihuahua, right, he said, I read the script. He was the president. So one morning, he leaves me a voicemail message. Because for the training, I had tables and things like that. And he leaves me a voicemail message complaining about, he says, I never teach them about irrigation, but it seems like they're teaching them how to eat. So I went to his office, and he was in the president's office, so I knocked on the door. He's my boss. Then he hears. So I knocked on the door, and he says, come in, Bill, without turning. I said, I found your voicemail. He says, I was scared. I said, every time we graze in one cycle, we save 15,000. It buys a lot of days. I said, you sign the receipts. I said, in 2 weeks, I'm doing a second shift class. I'm buying them breakfast, and you will sign the receipts. I said, if I buy caviar, you can complain, but you sign the receipts. And he loved the word of it. And then he got promoted higher and higher within Boeing. We had more and more reach. Right, wait, please tell us. Top attendance. It should be which of Dr. Deming's 2 theorems came first, the first or the second? Yeah, 2 theorems. Which came first?
Guess second. I don't know if I'm gonna guess.
The second came first. He said, we're being ruined by best efforts, not guided by profound knowledge. He said that. He said, we've got people unknowingly saving money on paper towels. Their best efforts to make things better are making things worse. He said, look, that's our problem, best efforts. His first theorem was no one gives a hood enough profit. Next thing you know, weapons of it. So when he came out with his second, people said, what's your first? And he said something like, I'm still working on it. I see no evidence of it. So the aim of this chapter, this is on chapter 4, the economics, realizes measurements of the transformation. A system cannot understand itself. The transformation requires an outside view. The aim of this chapter, providing an outside view of lens that he calls a super profound knowledge. It provides a lens, a theory by which to understand the organizations that we work in. So when rocket plane was owned by Boeing, there was a big, well, Boeing has an engineering union in Seattle. When I learned about that from high school or college classmate, I said, what do you have to do to get engineers so pissed off that they unionize? And so when Boeing bought Rocketdyne and a bunch of other Rockwell stuff, and then McDonnell Douglas, the Boeing union wanted to expand to Southern California. And it was well, before the Boeing management said, we've got this new profit sharing program, but it only applies to people who aren't union members. So it's turned down. And a few years later, we're getting a check for 5 days of pay, 7 days of pay, 8 days of pay. One time it was 25 or 27 days of pay. When I was doing training in Seattle during those times, everyone knew who got the money and who didn't. And so when Rocketdyne was sold to another company, United Technologies, Boeing for a year or so kept the profit sharing program. And then Rocketdyne continued it. And then at one point, Rocketdyne management said, we've got too many reportable injuries. So if the number of reportable injuries next year is more than 5, we're going to decrease the profit share. And somebody looked at each other and say, we know where this is going. So did the number of reportable injuries improve? Yes. Did safety improve? No. So what happened? People stopped reporting injuries. And I remember I was a stock broker at that time. I remember, at one point, like a hamstring pull, so it says, you injured? Or like, no, nobody's injured. So it's similar if you're doing, eventually, the stuff's going to hit the fan. Right? So what happens? Month by month, the number of injuries is next to nothing, next to nothing, next to nothing, but people are still being injured. Well, some sorry guy, and I'm thinking, the spouse says, you ought to go have this looked at. And they go in, check the box that says workplace injury. That gets the Rocketdyne management, and the stuff hits the fan. That person was publicly shamed. It is against our ethics not to report injuries. If you understood the Deming philosophy, you could see that coming a year in advance. So once the individual understands the system of profound knowledge and applies principles in every kind of relationship with others, have a basis for judging his own decisions of transformation of organization he belongs to. Right, the outside view, they have a ton of knowledge, there's the 4 parts related to each other. So it's appreciation of the system, nothing exists in isolation. And here, because everything we're working at home is, we know is connected to something. But at work, we forget the connection. Knowledge about variation, inherently we understand that. Psychology, right. So Gail met somebody at another company, Aero Energy, told them about what we're doing. Aero and Bakersfield is 50-50 venture between Chevron and Mobil, whatever, big company. And so I used to go up there. Gail would go up and do innovation training at no expense to them. They would send their people to help our rocket engine design at no expense to us. So we had this mutual thing going on. And so I would go up to seminars like this. Then after somebody said, how do they phrase it? Psychology, that's a people stuff. So if you've got a 24/7 factor without people, you don't need to worry about psychology. Just that people stuff. But the theory of knowledge stuff is, how do we know that what we know is so? And that's what happens. We don't challenge what we know. We get comfortable. So that's the possibilities of doing is that together is in a non-Deming company, together doesn't exist. Because together implies a relationship, and there's nothing in that organization which is about relationships. And so, I've got photos from your mom of you leaving the bowling ball in the doorway, and things like that. She said, put your clothes away, and you put them just inside your. We got you. We've got a photo of her in alignment in England where they're monitoring her years ago. She told her youngest, take that popsicle outside, right outside the door. You kids are all the same. That's it, the Red Beads Plus.
Thank you.
Anyone done?
So.
So I got the requirements.
No. I don't think there's anybody in line, sign off.